Would you like to know more about me? Rosie, would you like to know more about me? Rosie.
Hey everybody, this is Dave Lorden here, and I'm here to talk to you today about St. Paddy's Day in the context of the global history of festivals and carnivals and popular street celebrations. Now, before I say anything critical about St. Patrick's Day, I want to make it clear that it's an event that I've participated in and enjoyed all my life, like most Irish people around the world, and I also have a great admiration for all of the people who take part in it, particularly the volunteers who get those parades organised from the smallest villages in Ireland to the biggest cities in the world. There's many people, especially young children, who are getting a chance to show off their skills and their creativity before an appreciative and large audience, perhaps more appreciative and larger than any other they will come across in their lives. And really, we should be grateful that we have at least one day of the year where popular creativity is celebrated and encouraged. But that's not all there is to Paddy's Day, of course. There's plenty of sides of it that a lot of Irish people have disagreements with and are critical of, just like me. But before we get into talking about all of that, let's have a look at the history of Carnival and Parade. First, I think it's important that we draw a distinction between festival and carnival. There are all kinds of festivals, of course, but carnivals are large gatherings of people out in the open air involving usually parades and very, very joyous celebrations when the normal rules of social interaction are suspended for a little while. For example, you're very unlikely to wear a luminous green top hat or a fake ginger beard to work or to mass. Indeed, these type of public open-air festivals involving the entire community are very, very old indeed. It's possible that they began as much as 30 or 40,000 years ago at the beginning of what anthropologists refer to as behavioural modernity. There are theories that the cave paintings at Lascaux, for example, related to large intertribal gatherings every 4 or 5 years where there would be huge music, huge partying, huge amount of trance dancing, and a lot of hunt magic and getting together. Ancient civilizations like the Sumerians, held numerous festivals. These festivals were often to do with praising the monarch, mostly the king or the pharaoh. They were also to do with the seasons and important points of the agricultural calendar, for example, harvest time, and often also they were in praise of deities. In ancient Rome, perhaps the city which held the most festivals out of any in world history, where up to 3 months of every year was given over to festivities. A festival in late December, Saturnalia, which a lot of scholars believe our Christmas developed out of, was a festival of, you might call, reversals and subversion and, a temporary revolt, you might call it. During the Saturnalia, which lasted about 10 days at the end of December, slaves were waited upon and fed by their masters. Women lorded it over men. Drunkenness was more common than sobriety. People were allowed to sleep around. Homosexual activity was encouraged. So all kinds of things which were repressed and latent throughout the rest of the year were let come to the fore or be expressed during the period of Saturnalia. A similar type of festival culture evolved in Europe in the medieval period, and the most famous of these carnivalesque festivals in the medieval period is the Feast of Fools. Very like the Saturnalia. Some people think it's, a direct descendant of Saturnalia. In any case, the same kind of suspension of the normal rules and general carry-on was allowed without limits on the streets for a period of days. The Feast of Fools again taking place in the new year, a little bit later than Saturnalia. And this added in blasphemy. So mock texts, mock clergy, and overall a mock bishop was appointed in every place that was observing it, called the Lord of Misrule. Now, scholars of course have looked at the Saturnalia, and they've looked at the Feast of Fools, and they've looked at lots of other festivals that were like that in antiquity, in Rome, and later on in the medieval period up until about 1400, 1500, and they've really theorized that what these free-for-all festivals were about, when the lowest became the highest, and north became south and east became west, and women dressed as men and men dressed as women, and nobody really knew what was going on. They just had, let all of their energies be expressed, let all of their desires, and particularly their kind of, their desires to send up or satirize the lords and the kings and the bishop. All of these were expressed for a few days, and then everything went back to normal. In the very, very strict and rigidly hierarchical society of the Middle Ages, scholars believe that these festivals, these carnivals, these anything-go events were a kind of a safety valve through which social tensions were released, contributed to keeping society, an ordered hierarchical place overall. So let them out to have their fun, for a couple of days, and then we'll whip them back into line for the rest of the year. Seems to be how it worked in the medieval period. Now, in the 20th century, the Russian scholar Mikhail Bakhtin did a long study of these carnivals, these medieval carnivals. Bakhtin noted 6 essential characteristics of the carnivalesque. Number 1 is that there were no divisions between performers and spectators, no fourth wall as it was later called in the theatre. Participants live in the carnival. They live a carnivalistic life. In other words, it's not pretend, it's not play, it's not acting, it's actual life itself. Number 2 is that the laws, customs and social hierarchies which dominate non-carnival life are suspended for the duration of the carnival. Anything goes, as I said earlier. Number 3 is that all distance between people is suspended, and there is free and familiar contact between people of whatever rank, station, gender and so on. Number 4 is what he calls eccentric behaviour. That is, what is not permitted or is repressed in ordinary life comes to the fore during carnival. The latent surfaces. Desire comes forward. Number 5 is what he calls carnivalistic mésalliance. Carnivalistic mésalliance. In other words, things which are normally distant and even opposed to each other are paired, united, mixed up. The sacred and the profane, the lofty and the low, great with insignificant, wise with stupid. 6th is profanation, filth and blasphemy. Lots of farting and belching and rude jokes and sexual imagery and coruscating parodies of sacred texts, as we saw with the Feast of Fools and so on. So the carnivalesque is a vehicle of temporary freedom and equality for the masses. Now, you might be thinking at this stage that Bakhtin's descriptions don't sound or look like anything like the St. Patrick's Day Parade in my local town, or like any Paddy's Day Parade you've ever been on or ever heard of, and you'd be right about that. That's because at the end of the medieval period and the beginning of our very own modern one, there's a radical sanitisation of street celebrations take place, alongside, closer to our own day and gathering pace all the time, an overwhelming commercialisation of the same. So all that we have left now is the form of the street gathering, nothing of either its earlier religious or sacred or its medieval subversive content. What we have in Bakhtin's account is not carnival at all, in fact, but narrow street pageantry is what he calls it. Well, what accounts for the change? What surprises me, to be honest, in the first place, is that medieval authorities allowed and indeed encouraged such festivities as the Feast of Fools to take place at all. Wasn't there always a danger that people simply wouldn't go back to work? That the revellers simply would not stop mocking the bishop or expecting the lady of the manor to serve them their dinner? I think it's fair to say that in a much less urbanised and to a great degree less politicised society as the medieval was, the authorities had less fear of and less experience of the revolutionary potential of the crowd than modern authorities, if you like, the post-English Civil War, post-French Revolution authorities might have today. I don't think it would have crossed the minds of the bishops or the lords or indeed many of the people, 99.9% if not all of the people participating, the ordinary people participating in the carnivals, to extend the temporary revolution and take over completely and make the small period of overthrow a permanent one. In any case, as the medieval wore on and society became, as I said, more urbanised and more polarised between classes, and as at the same time kings and bishops began to extend their rule right down into the everyday details of people's lives, authorities did become more wary and the crackdown on carnival began. By 1500 there were no more carnivals, though some of the energies of carnival did continue in different forms, such as the circus and the theatre. The street pageant from then on was really to be about obedience and order and loyalty to particular social and national ideals, to particular social and national forms. St. Patrick's Day is a conservative and reactionary institution from day one. It commemorates the death of St. Patrick, who after a long and successful career as a snake oil salesman managed to convince the Irish chieftains to convert to the Roman imperial religion. However, it wasn't until 1400 years later, after the trauma of the Great Famine, that the Christian Catholic Church completely, or almost completely, wiped out the native and pagan traditions of Ireland. St. Patrick's Day, in a way, then celebrates the beginning of the wipeout of Irish particularity and the wipeout of Irish difference relative to the European Empire or the Roman Empire, much more than it does Irish uniqueness and particularity. It wasn't until the early 1600s that Luke Wadding, founder of the Irish College in Rome and favourite of popes and kings alike, and according to one source I can find, an assessor for the Inquisition. Perhaps there are historians out there who can deny that or confirm it. Certainly the Franciscans were enthusiastic supporters and participants in the Inquisition. Luke Wadding, a prominent Franciscan of the early 1600s, not unlikely he was involved. He convinced his friends in the high-ups in Rome, where he was a very powerful figure, to declare Paddy's Day a holy day of obligation. And thereafter Paddy's Day became that worldwide for the Catholic Church, mostly celebrated among the Irish and among the Irish diaspora. But the parades, as we know them, did not in fact begin in Ireland, began in the United States in 1732 in Boston, later in the 1760s in New York, among Irish soldiers, as it would happen, seeking to have some sort of cultural connection with back home. There's also an early example of a parade in Australia, in Sydney, where the governor of the New South Wales penal colony got together a St. Patrick's Day celebration in 1810, perhaps to entertain the convicts or make them feel a little bit better about being convicts. In Ireland, right up until the 1980s, really, in many places, and perhaps even into the mid-90s, the St. Patrick's Day parade were quite a sombre celebration. One friend of mine recalls them as being like Eastern Bloc events with men in suits working for the state, whether it was the ASB or the Civil Service or RTE, on the backs of parades, and then a couple of military bands and so on and so forth. So certainly the explosion of tack and quiche and so on that we know today was not the case up until very recently. In fact, you couldn't even drink on St. Patrick's Day or legally drink until 1961. So all of that that we've kind of become naturally accustomed to now, the massive parades with the focus on selling green plastic and drinking, that comes about in the mid-1990s, where there's a turn overall, a neoliberal turn among the Irish elite who were looking to become part of the global party of speculative capitalism, and so much effort is put into commercialising St. Patrick's Day worldwide. I mean, the ruling elite in Ireland decided that they would earn more, and St. Patrick's Day would be worked more as a celebration of commerce than as a celebration of Christianity. But it's in America where the parades are largest and most popular and most politically influential. Overall, the American parades seem to be a way of marshalling the Irish communities behind political and cultural elites, the gombeans abroad you might call them, a show of political strength and influence disguised as an innocent family day out. The Grand Marshals indeed are often Grand Egypts or Grand Gombeans indeed. Take, for example, this year's Grand Marshal, Michael Dowling, who's a private health mogul and an illness profiteer, and who heads up the Northwell Health Provider Company. In 2014, Michael, the head of this so-called non-profit company, drew down $10 million in payment and compensation between bonuses, pensions, pay, and so on and so forth. Now, what has he got in common with 99% of Irish people? Do you make money out of cancer, strokes, car crashes, diabetes and so on? No, neither do I. Michael Dowling does, however, have a lot in common with Enda Kenny, as you might have guessed, and here he is pictured with Enda signing some kind of a deal a couple of years ago through Enterprise Ireland. The guy who signs the deal with the Irish government worth many millions of dollars ends up head of the St. Patrick's Day parade, which by the way is still excluding the vast majority of Irish gays, LGBTQs, and many of their organisations from participating in the parade on a bigoted and homophobic basis. And the New York City parade is and always has been a celebration of bigotry and stupidity. The list of people banned from participating in it because they aren't Irish enough is a bit of a roll of honour, to be honest. Even somebody as I would say quite politically harmless as Robert Kennedy was banned from taking part in the parade because of his politicking. Besides this, Brendan Behan and Bernadette McAliskey, two of the greatest Irish people of the last century, without a doubt, were both banned from participating in the New York City parade. The association of the Patrick's Day parade with homophobia is still very strong in the United States. Only last week, the homophobic organisers of the Boston City parade had to back down on once again banning gays and gay organisations from expressing themselves on the Boston parade. I have to ask, in the world that we live in now, is this really winning allies for Irish people in the United States? Do Irish Americans really think that backroom deals between Enda and Donald Trump and Michael Dowling, or whoever it is, are going to help their position in the United States? Or isn't it really by reaching out and joining up with other excluded minorities that we have a better chance in the United States of justice for everybody? I don't think Patrick's Day in the United States is particularly helpful for ordinary Irish people building political alliances. Included mightn't be helpful. It might be the opposite, but it is certainly helpful for big business and career politicians and gombeans and nepotists to make plenty of deals behind everybody else's back. Let's look at alcohol and alcoholism. A central part of the commerce and the image of St. Patrick's Day. Guinness, not an Irish-owned company. Biggest Guinness factory in the world is in Lagos in Nigeria. Fair play to them. But Guinness sales soar on St. Patrick's Day. Recent figures show that 5.5 million pints of Guinness are drunk on a normal day. 11 million are drunk on St. Patrick's Day. An average of 30 people die in the United States from alcohol-related crashes on Paddy's Day, and over a decade that amounts to hundreds of dead and thousands of injured. It's not a very happy day for those families, St. Patrick's Day, I'm sure. Let's have a look think about the environment. $6 billion is spent in the United States on St. Patrick's Day. That figure has multiplied by 4 to 5 times in 10 years since the mid-noughties. The commerce of St. Patrick's Day has really exploded from the point that most of that is plastic trash that people are buying in discount stores. Where does it go afterwards? That's right, it goes into the earth to poison the earth. So from the point of view of the environment, Paddy's Day is an unmitigated disaster. St. Paddy's Day, fake green as it is a major contributor to the ungreening of the real world. And I just want to finish with something about the form of the Paddy's Day parade, and this is the same in Greystones where I live, and where the parade is very popular and I enjoy it, and it's a good day out for kids and things like that. When we take away all the political and cultural and historical context and focus on the thing itself, it can be quite innocent, but of course it's not really innocent at all. The form of the St. Patrick's Day all over the world, and what does that form tell us about what those parades in general signify, what they support, what kind of society they reproduce, if you like. The community groups, and the business groups often know these as well, march past a review stand where they are examined and later judged by members of the local elite. It might be a couple of the local business people, the local Monsignor or Bishop, the local big chief of the cops, or whatever it is, maybe the hotel owner, it's the superintendent, the mother superior, etc., etc. Later they judge who's the best of the community, stick a little badge on whoever the 1, 2 and 3 are, and later they go and have a banquet paid for by us, and no doubt do their own deals, which we don't get to find out about there. This for me is over the St. Patrick's Day in the form of it, in that marching past the elite, in looking for confirmation, and praise from the elite, in lining up in front of the elite and being obedient in that way to the elite. The St. Patrick's Day parades reinscribe an Ireland which is conservative, Catholic, monocultural, culturally moronic, to be honest with you, and where the ordinary people are merely a backdrop for the important dealings of the elite, and the best that anyone from the ranks, any of the ordinary people, in the way that St. Patrick's Day kind of crystallizes a vision of society, the only thing that ordinary people can ever hope for is to have a medal pinned to their chest by the chief of police or a pat on the back from the bishop. Is this what it means to be Irish? I don't think so. I think we're in the beginning of a process of recovery from the crushingly oppressive experience of being Irish for most ordinary people throughout the 20th century. And I think as we move forward as a people and we become, more proud of who we are as individuals and more unwilling to accept oppression or, cracking down on people because they're gay or because they express diverse political opinions or anything like that, I think we do have a chance as a community to maybe return something of the carnivalesque to Paddy's Day and make it a true people's celebration. And thanks for watching, everyone, and please give the video a thumbs up and consider sharing it onto your timeline. I'm an independent, grassroots Irish artist working in various genres: poetry, fiction, performance and video, and I'm not afraid to say what I think and what needs to be said in any of them. I'm really excited about my video blogging adventure, where I'll be covering arts, politics and culture from a grassroots, bottom-up Irish rebel perspective, the kind of news and views you won't find in Ireland's elitist establishment supporting mainstream media. If you think that sounds like a good idea and would like to support me, once again, please do like and share, and follow me over on Instagram, on Facebook, subscribe to my YouTube channel please, but above all, do check out my website davelorden.com, where you'll find loads of my work in a whole range of forms and genres, and a free first book of frags along with other gifts and surprises. Thanks very much for your time and attention. Dave Lorden over and out.